Good morning, everyone. So this is Miss Soma. So today I'm going to be talking about ratio and proportion and then going into tax tip discount. All right, so first, let's talk about equivalent fractions because you've had these lessons in the past. So let's have a common fraction here that we usually see. It's 1/2. So can you give me another fraction that is equivalent to 1/2? Well, we could say 3/6, that's equal to 1/2. Okay, then we can also say 4/8, that's also equivalent to 1/2. What else? Let's say 5/10. So that's also equivalent to 1/2. And how did we know that these are equal fractions? Okay, well, first the numerator is half of the denominator. We can say it like that. Also, let's look at other relationships that we can find here. Well, I know for sure that 2 times 3 will give me 6. And if I will multiply the numerator, which is 1, by 3, that will give me a 3 as well. So, therefore, 3/6 is equivalent to 1/2. I can also test it here. 1 times 4 will give me 4, and then 2 times 4 will give me 8, and then same thing with 1 times 5 gives me 5, 2 times 5 gives me 10. Is there any other way we can test if two fractions are equal to each other? Well, I also noticed that that's kind of hard from here going here, but since these two are equal, and these two are also equal, that means these two must also be equal. I also noticed that if I am going to multiply 6 times 4, I get 24. And then 3 times 8, I also get 24. And then I know that these two fractions are equal. So let's test that here. 8 times 5 is 40. And then 4 times 10 is 40. So therefore, I can also cross multiply the numerator and the denominator of the two different fractions that we're comparing, and then the numerator from the other fraction to the denominator of the other fraction, and that would tell me that these two fractions are equal, and we usually call that cross multiplication. I can also just multiply the same numbers to both numerator and denominator to get to the other fraction. Or I can also do 6 divided by 3. I can also go that way. 6 divided by 3 is 2, and 3 divided by 3 is 1. So there are multiple ways you can check or verify when two fractions are equal. Okay, so let's try it with this fractions right here. 2, I'm going to put 2/5. And then I'm going to check if this is equal to, let's say, 10 over 25. All right, so let's see. Well, I know that 2 times 5 is 10. So I'm going to multiply the same thing to the denominator. Well, 5 times 5 is 25. So I can say that 2/5 is equivalent to 10 over 25. Now, let's try our cross multiplication. 5 times 10 is 50. 2 times 5 is also 50. So these two are definitely equivalent fractions. Now let's try with 3/4 and 1/3. All right, so 3 divided by 3 gives me 1, but 4 divided by 3, it's not 3. So these are not equivalent fractions. And let's look at our cross multiplication as well. 4 times 1 is 4. 3 times 3 is 9. So that's another way to check that these two fractions are not equal. Now, when we are actually comparing two equivalent fractions, that's actually what we call proportion. Okay, so let's look at some proportion tables here. Well, some of them are really not proportion tables. But let's just look at number 1. Okay, so let's take a look here. If there are 4 notebooks, the cost would be $2. Okay, so this is in dollars. If there are 8 notebooks, the cost is $4. 6 notebooks, $3. 10 notebooks, $5. And then 20, 10. So can you predict already what should be the partner of 30? Well, it should be 15 because it's just half. Now, let's take a look. When you are given proportion table, I want you to always consider how much would be the cost for just one item. So, if it's just one notebook, what do you think is the cost? All right, so let's look in here. 4 notebooks, you get 2. So now, what I'd like to do is divide this by 4 so that I can get a 1. And so I'll divide this also by 4. So 2 divided by 4, that is 0.50. So in other words, the cost of one notebook is 50 cents, and that's what we call unit rate. All right, so 50 cents per notebook. Okay, and then let's check if this is showing a proportion table. All right, so let's do our strategy here. For this, it's hard for me to say what should I divide to 8 to get 6. So I'm just going to do my cross multiplication. All right, so 8 times 3 is 24. 6 times 4 is 24. That works. Now, let's look at here. 6 times 5 is 30. 10 times 3 is 30. That's proportion. And then now, here I can easily see 10 going to 20. So, times 2. All right. And then if I'm going to do times 2 here as well in the denominator, I get a 10. So, that's proportion. Now, I'm going to get back to my cross multiplication. 300. And this is 300. All right. Then here, I can easily see that 30 divided by 30 will give me 1. And then 15 divided by 30 will also give me 50 cents. So, everything here is following what we've studied on how 2 fractions are equivalent. So, therefore, this table is showing proportionality. Okay, so now let's check the second one. All right, so 3 going to 4. Oh, here, I can easily see a relationship here. If I have 4, then the number of hours is 4, and then the dollars earned is 90. So from 4, it became 8, so it just doubled. So therefore, this should double as well. Now let's verify. 8 times 90, that would give you 720. And 4 times 180 is also 720. Okay? Now let's see here. 3 and then 67.50. Okay, so let's do our cross multiplication here. 4 times 67.50. Okay, so let me get my calculator. So 4 times 67.50 equals 270. And then 3 times 90 is also 270. So here, this is also showing proportion. Well, number 3, let's take a look here. I can also see the relationship here that 6, it's increasing by 2. 6 plus 2 is 8 plus 2, 10 plus 2, 12. And if I would have to do 14 here, so 10 plus 5, 15 plus 5, 25. So this must be 30 as well by just looking at the pattern. Now, is this showing proportion here? So let's check. Which one is easy to see? Let's just look at 6 and 12 here. That's times 2. Okay? So then if we do times 2 to your 10, we expect to get a 20 here as well, but we didn't get a 20, we got a 25. So this table is not showing proportion. So what I'm showing here is it doesn't mean that because the increase is constant on your numerator and the increase is constant on your denominator that is showing proportionality. It's not like that. So it's only showing proportionality if the pattern is done through multiplication and not multiplication or division and not through addition or subtraction. So now if we also use our cross multiplication test here, 8 times 20 is 160, but 15 times 10 is 150. So it clearly shows that this table is not showing proportion even if we can predict the pattern. Again, it's only showing proportion if the pattern is shown is done through multiplication or division and not when it's addition or subtraction. All right, so now let's practice few word problems. Okay, so I have a word problems here. Okay, so I have, it takes one supergiant pizza to feed 3 people. If you invite 36 people, how many pizzas will you need? So again, I want you to always do a table. Okay? Just like what we did with our proportion table. So what are the two things that we are comparing here? So let's look at our first sentence. Okay, so it takes one supergiant pizza to feed 3 people. So we're comparing between pizza and people. All right, so one pizza feeds how many people? 3 people. All right. Now, if you invite 36 people, so where should I put the 36? It should be where people is. So 36 is over here. And then how many pizzas will you need? Well, there are many ways you can do this. So let's look at what should you multiply to 3 to get to 36? That would be 12, isn't it? So times 12. So well, you simply do times 12 on your 1 as well. So then you will need 12 giant pizzas. Or you can also, let's say this was x. Okay, so let's pretend this is x. Okay, so now you will have a ratio or a fraction that is 1 to 3. And we don't know the top, and this is 36. And what did we say between the cross multiplication? We say that they are equal. All right, so 1 times 36 is 36. 3 times x is 3x. So if we solve the equation, divided by 3, so x is equal to 12. You can do it like that. Okay, let's try another one. All right, so at a recent party, it cost $9.50 for refreshments for 10 guests. Okay, so from the first sentence, let's create a table. All right, so what are the two things we're comparing here? The cost and the guest. Okay, so guests and then the cost. You can also reverse it. You can also have cost on top, guest at the bottom. Doesn't matter. All right, so now I'm going to have 10 guests. Then I get $9.50 for the cost. Now, what if I have 80 guests? So where will I put the 80 guests? Well, where it says guests. And then you can do, well, you can easily see here, 10 times 8 is 80. You can also do 950 times 8. So let's do 950 times 8. That gives you 76. Okay, or you can do the fraction like what we did here. So 10 over 950 is equal to 80 over x. All right, so 80 times 9.50, that gives me 760 is equal to 10 times x, and then divided by 10. Well, x is equal to 76. Okay? So now let's do one more. Okay, so let's look at number 4. The park ranger stocks the children's fishing pond, keeping a ratio of 4 sunfish to 3 perch. If he puts 300 sunfish into the pond, how many perch should be put into the pond? Okay, so let's make a table. Okay, so what ratio are we looking at? Sunfish and perch. So sunfish and perch. All right, so the ratio is 4 sunfish to 3 perch. All right, so 4 sunfish, 3 perch. Now, if he puts 300 sunfish, so 300, and then I don't know how many perch, so it's hard for me to determine what should I multiply to 4 to get to 300. Well, you can also just do the reverse. 300 divided by 4, that will give you that number. But I can also go straight to my cross multiplication. So 3 times 300 is 900, is equal to 4 times x. And I don't know how much is that x. So to determine that, I will solve my equation, divided by 4. So now my x is, how much is 900 divided by 4? 900 divided by 4. So that means we need 225 perch. All right, now I have this problem right here that I would like you to try. Okay, so let's look at my problem. So Soma only plants tulips and roses in her garden. There are 3 tulips for every 5 roses in Soma's garden. How many tulips are there if there are 64 flowers in all? So this problem is kind of like different. So now we have the ratio is 3 tulips for every 5 roses. So let's make a table again. It always helps if you create a table. All right, so the ratio here is on tulips and roses. So what is the ratio here? 3 tulips for every 5 roses. Now, but the next sentence says, how many tulips are there if there are 64 flowers all together? So the 64 flowers, this is made up of tulips plus roses. Okay, so now we have to maintain this ratio of 3 to 5. So here, how many flowers do I have here together? So now let's add flowers. Now I have 8 flowers together. So now if I'm going to double this, so let's say now I have 6 tulips, I will also have 10 roses, and that's what's my total here? That would be 16 flowers altogether. But we want our total to be 64. So now I would have to do what? Can you do a shortcut now here? So I can easily do a times 4 here, and that would bring my total to 64. Now I have to do times 4 here. That would bring me to 40 roses. Times 4 here, that would give me 24 tulips. So answering the question, how many tulips are there if there are 64 flowers together, then you say, oh, I have 24 tulips. Okay, so it's important to really interpret the question, because even if it's like, we know it's a proportion problem, sometimes the question is being changed. It's not like the usual pattern. So I don't want you to answer word problems by just using pattern and same pattern. Always understand the question. All right, so let's look at this one. Mrs. Soma is printing shirts for her robotics team. The ratio between gray and black shirts is 4:1. How many gray shirts are printed if she printed a total of 60 shirts? Okay, so again, we are comparing two things here. The gray shirts and the black shirts. All right. So first, the ratio is 4:1. So gray is mentioned first. So that means 4 belongs to gray and black is 1. Now, the ratio is 4:1. But then all of a sudden, I was talking about just the total number of shirts. So now we're going to do the same thing. So what is the number of shirts here? So the number of shirts is 5. 4 gray, 1 black, so a total is 5. Now, I need to get to 60 shirts. Alright, so what should I multiply to 5 to get to 60? Let's just say, oh, that's kind of hard for now. Let's just make it to 10 first. Times 2. So I'm going to times 2 everything. You see where I'm going? I'm going to make it to 10 so in order for me to get to 60 right away. Alright, so now this is 8. This is 2. This is 10. Now, I can easily get to 60 shirts by multiplying this by 6. So now I have 60 shirts. Times 6, I have 12 black. Times 6, I have 48 gray shirts. So to answer the question, how many gray shirts if there are 60 shirts in all? So the answer is 48 gray shirts if there are 60 shirts altogether. All right, so now we will use this concept as I talk about tax tip discount. I'm gonna make a separate video for tax tip discount because I think this is too long already. Okay, so let's transfer to the next video.